The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3 is easily one of the most highly anticipated JRPGs of 2019, and definitely one of the biggest. If my Twitter timeline is any indication, you guys are really excited about this game. But one thing I want to say before I really get into this video is that this is not going to be a typical in-depth review. This is basically going to answer the question, is Cold Steel 3 for you? Just like the video title suggests, is this game for you? And most of you are probably already playing this game. They probably already know if this game is for you or not. But I want to give a brief overview of the game, what it is, what you can expect from the game. And I'm only going to show footage from early in the game because a friend of mine got spoiled apparently from a single screenshot, and he has still not forgiven me to this day. So I know a lot of you out there that love this series are very sensitive to spoilers, so I'm only going to show footage from early in the game to try to avoid that for you. But with that being said, let's get started with the overview for Cold Steel 3.
Wow, the magazines don't do you justice. You look so mature now.
Cold Steel 3 takes place a year and a half after Cold Steel 2. Everyone has graduated Thor's military academy, and they're off doing their own thing in the world. You once again play as Irene Schwarzer, and he is now an instructor at Thor's military academy, but not the original Thor's military. It's a branch campus, kind of a satellite campus in a new town called Leaves. And joining him is his old friend Toa Herschel, who's also joining as an instructor. Now this campus in Leaves is not the same as the original. It's not as big, it's not as prestigious. In fact, they call it the trash bin. This is kind of where they send all the rejects, and it seems weird that they would send Reem here considering he was sort of a hero in the Civil War, and the game definitely gets into that. Each instructor definitely has their own specialty, and in this they're also given their own class to be homeroom teachers over. Reen is the homeroom teacher for class 7. Now this is a special operations class. They do a lot of special testing and things like that. And to begin, you only have Yuna, Kurt, and Altina in your class. The other classes are much bigger, and this only starts with 3 students, but as the game goes on, characters named Muse and Ash will join. Pretty early on in the game, you'll see really familiar characters from past titles and hints of a greater plot brewing, and there's a lot of mysteries to uncover in this game, and I don't want to get into any of that because, like I said, people are very sensitive to spoilers, but just know early on, there's hints of some more interesting things that are happening, and you'll definitely get into that as the game goes on. And if you've followed this series up until now, this is the game for you because there's a lot of cameos, not only from the Cold Steel series, but from Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. In fact, Tita from the Sky series makes an appearance in this game, and she's in it quite a bit, and as you'll play the game, you'll figure out why. If you've played Cold Steel 1, and if you're playing Cold Steel 3, you've probably played Cold Steel 1, the structure of this game is nearly identical. You'll have class time teaching your students, you then have free time, you go to what's called the Einhal Keep, which is essentially the old schoolhouse from Cold Steel 1, You'll do field studies, rinse, and repeat. So if you liked Cold Steel 1, good news, it's pretty much the same game. There are, of course, extra activities to participate in. There's fishing, you can go to the bathhouse and get in some interesting conversations, and there's a new card game called Vantage Masters. In my opinion, it's not as good as Blade. Blade was just very simple, easy to pick up and play. Vantage Masters, there's quite the tutorial, there's a lot more things to do, a lot more in-depth, but if you're in for that, then you'll probably like Vantage Masters. One thing that should be fairly obvious just by simply looking at the game is that it looks way better. Not only is the resolution higher from the Vita and PS3 games, obviously, it runs better, the character models are much more detailed, there's much better animations, and once again, if you've played the remastered versions, this game also runs at a silky smooth 60 frames per second. This game looks and runs beautifully. Combat, once again, plays out very similarly to Cold Steel 1 and 2, and don't be fooled by the Persona-style UI. It's just an easier way for you to get into the combat. The combat is not snappier or anything like Persona. It is basically Cold Steel 1 and 2 with a few twists. Reen gets the ability to put buffs on your party, which are extremely helpful. This comes from the meter that you would do follow-up attacks with, so instead of doing follow-up attacks, you can use those points to give buffs to your party. If you've liked the music from the past, the music is once again fantastic. Falcom always comes through with amazing music, and Cold Steel 3 is more of the same, still awesome and amazing. And the voice acting is also great. Now, I know a lot of people had beefs with some of the localizations that NIS America has done, but almost the exact same cast from Cold Steel 1 and 2 is back in Cold Steel 3, obviously with new additions from the new Class 7 and other characters that come in that have not been voiced before, but they all do a great job. They're all amazing. You really get a sense of these characters. Personally, my favorite is Yuna. You really get a sense that she doesn't like Reen. You know, she's mad because she's from Crossbell and she kind of has a grudge against Reen, and I don't know, that plays out really well, and it's voiced by Erica Harlicker, who plays On in Persona 5, and she just does a fantastic job.
We did what you said and came here, but what the heck is all this crap? This is just... I mean, no one ever told me I was being put in some shady Black Ops squad.
Now that is all I'm willing to get into with this game as far as what you can expect from it. So I hope that's enough. Once again, if you want more in-depth reviews, but there are a ton of other great reviews out there that go way more in-depth. So now I want to answer the question, is Cold Steel 3 for you? Now, if you played Cold Steel 1 and 2, obviously this game is for you. I'm sure you've already pre-ordered your special edition. By the time this video comes out, you're probably already playing the game. If you are invested in this series, this is a must play. It's more of the same, but it's polished and it's just ramped up and you have to play it. If you're even further invested and have played the Sky games, then you definitely need to play this because again, there are characters that carry over from that series. So this is really a culmination of all the different games coming into one. And I think that's part of the appeal for this game because there are so many cameos, not only from previous Cold Steel games. That's pretty obvious if you watched any of the trailers or if you know anything from the series. Now, who is this game not for? Well, let me tell you this. If you played Cold Steel 1 and you didn't like it, you're not gonna like Cold Steel 3. I'll promise you that right now. Yes, it looks better, it runs better, the character models are more detailed, but everything that you probably didn't like from that game, from the slow start, lots of talking, the structure, it's the same in Cold Steel 3 and you probably just won't like it. Also, let me warn you, don't believe anything NIS America might be saying about this game. Yes, there are in-game story synopses from the previous two games, but it's not the same. The great appeal about this series is getting to know these characters in deep ways and playing with them and adventuring with them for 2 games leading into this 3rd game. And if you just haven't experienced those characters, if you haven't experienced the story, then 3 is not going to hit you as hard. And I feel like that is part of the appeal, especially early on. There's a lot of callbacks to previous characters and things that have happened in previous games. And if you just haven't played them or are not familiar with it, then you're just not going to enjoy the game as much, plain and simple. But let's say you're hearing about this game and you're excited and you want to get into the Cold Steel series. Is this series for you? Well, if you are not willing to play dialogue-heavy games, games that really dig into the world, like the thing that people keep saying is that it's all about the world building. The NPCs have different things to say every time you talk to them. If you play RPGs for anything other than this deep story and dialogue, this probably is not for you. If you like to explore, this game is really not for you. This series is really not for you. There's not a ton of exploring in these games. It's not an open world by any means. In my opinion, I think the series has a real problem with letting you actually play it. There were so many times where 15, 20, 30 minutes would go by between me actually controlling and playing the game. It's just dialogue thrown at you and story drip fed. So if you don't like deep lore, really digging into the nitty gritty of story and minor characters, this game and this series will not be for you, trust me. I haven't talked about this series really on my channel, so if you'll allow me, let me do a little Cold Steel rant. I do not like the Trails of Cold Steel series. It drip feeds you the story, especially in Cold Steel 1. You go hours between meaningful story content. You just do meaningless side tasks, boring things here and there. And I feel like it just asks a lot of the player. Like every time I talk to fans of the series, they always say, well, you didn't play the Sky series. Oh, you got to play all the games. It's like, who can invest 300-400 hours into all these games for a payoff, in my opinion, that is just not worth the time investment? Yes, these games have really epic endings, and Cold Steel 3, if you're invested in this series, it has an amazing, crazy ending. But to me, I just, it's not worth the 50, 60, 100 plus hours it takes to go through each of these games for it. To me, it's just not worth it. It kind of reminds me of the old Final Fantasy 13 argument. Oh, once the game opens up, 40 hours in, then it gets good. A game should be good either immediately or within a few hours. And yes, I get that JRPGs take a while to build up and they take a while to get going, especially Persona, a series that I love, but it just doesn't do it for me with the Cold Steel series. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. As I was capturing footage for this review, I literally fell asleep. I'm not even kidding. I was sitting there, I was playing, there was just so much dialogue that was going on, and I just didn't care. And I just dozed off for a minute. I was like, oh my God, I've never had a game put me to sleep, literally put me to sleep before. So that's my rant for Cold Steel. It's not for me. I've played and replayed the game with the remasters. It is just not for me. And frankly, after doing this video and after playing Cold Steel 3, I am conceding that this series is just not for me and I'm not gonna play it anymore. I know Cold Steel 4 is probably coming next year, but this series is clearly just not for me. So even though I really don't like this series, being as big of a JRPG nerd as I am, I'm thrilled that so many of you out there love it, because this series has a very die-hard, fanatic fan base. And I'm so happy for you guys. I know you've waited a long time for Cold Steel 3, and hopefully Cold Steel 4 does not take quite as long. Hopefully we get it next year. But anyways, that is my video for Cold Steel 3. Hopefully it helped you out a little bit. If nothing else, I hope this video entertain you. I hope you're enjoying playing Cold Steel 3, as by the time this video comes out, I've already seen people get early editions of their special edition. So people are already playing it, people are already enjoying it, and I hope you do that. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.